36.6 million. That is all it cost. Not 36 billion, not 36 trillion, $36 million. That is the price China charged Iran for the satellite that located Benjamin Netanyahu's most classified underground bunker in Tel Aviv. The same bunker that Israeli intelligence spent years hiding. The same location that America's entire signals intelligence apparatus, the NSA, the CIA, the NRO, with a combined annual budget exceeding $90 billion, was supposed to make untouchable. One commercial satellite, $36 million. And the most protected man in the Middle East was suddenly visible from space. Nobody on cable news is running this number, because running this number forces a question that the entire Western intelligence establishment does not want answered publicly. If a $36 million Chinese commercial satellite can find Netanyahu's secret bunker, what exactly are we getting for $90 billion a year? I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened. The satellite, the targeting, the strike, and the number that connects all of it to your fuel bill, your grocery receipt, and the bond market that holds your pension together. And today we are going to do what the Pentagon absolutely does not want us to do. We are going to run the numbers. Here is the official version of events. Iran has been absorbing Israeli and American airstrikes since Operation Epic Fury began. Over 7,000 strikes. Claimed destruction of 80% of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Claimed elimination of ballistic missile launch ramps. The narrative from Washington and Tel Aviv was linear and confident. Degrade, suppress, dominate. That narrative collapsed on April 14th and 15th, 2026. In the 49th and 53rd waves of what Iran designated Operation True Promise 4, Iranian missiles did not miss. They did not scatter. They did not strike approximate coordinates. They struck precise ones. The Haifa refinery, Israel's largest energy processing facility, was hit with direct impact accuracy. Netanyahu's classified Tel Aviv underground command bunker was targeted with coordinates specific enough to produce structural damage assessments. These were not lucky shots. These were the product of verified, real-time, high-resolution targeting intelligence. And the source of that intelligence is where the story becomes extraordinary. In late 2024, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Forces acquired the Earth-Eye TE-01B, a commercial reconnaissance satellite manufactured by Earth-Eye Codecurs, a Chinese firm based in Beijing. Purchase price, $36.6 million. The satellite operates electro-optical sensors capable of producing imagery at resolutions that identify individual structures, underground facility entrance points, and military infrastructure that ground-level intelligence cannot map. Throughout this conflict, the TEE-01B has been orbiting Hormuz, Tel Aviv, and American forward operating bases across the region, feeding targeting coordinates directly into Iran's ballistic missile fire control systems. The Chinese Foreign Ministry denied everything. Of course they did. But the Financial Times sourced this from leaked documents, and the missile impact patterns tell the rest of the story with a precision that denial cannot erase. Now run the numbers, because this is where the math becomes devastating. The United States National Reconnaissance Office operates the most sophisticated space-based intelligence architecture in human history. Total American intelligence community budget, approximately $90 billion annually. The explicit mission of that apparatus, information superiority. The ability to know everything about an adversary before the adversary knows anything about you. This is not just a military advantage. It is the foundational premise of every American military doctrine written since 1991. Iran spent $36.6 million on one satellite and eliminated that premise over the Middle East theater in a single procurement cycle. The cost exchange ratio here is not unfavorable. It is not problematic. It is a mathematical humiliation. For every dollar Iran spent on the TEE-01B, America had spent roughly $2,160 on intelligence infrastructure that the TEE-01B just rendered operationally irrelevant in this conflict zone. And here's the implication that goes far beyond Netanyahu's bunker. Information superiority is not just about knowing where your enemy is. It is the mechanism that allows smaller forces to defeat larger ones. It is what allows precision strikes to substitute for mass. It is what allows a carrier strike group to project power without having to absorb attritional losses, strip away information superiority, and the entire American way of war since Desert Storm unravels mathematically. The TEE-01B did not just find Netanyahu's bunker. It demonstrated that the American information monopoly over Middle Eastern airspace has been commercially circumvented for $36.6 million, and that demonstration is now known to every defense ministry, every insurgent planning cell, and every peer competitor on Earth. Stay with me. Because what happened in the skies over Israel on the same nights is the second half of this equation. And the second half is where the math gets truly ugly. Iran's missile salvos in the 49th and 53rd waves deployed K-bar Shekin solid fuel ballistic missiles, Fata hypersonic systems traveling at multiples of the speed of sound, and PEPE long-range cruise missiles with cooperative engagement capability, meaning they communicate with each other mid-flight, generate decoy profiles, and distribute the radar tracking load across multiple simultaneous approach vectors. Against this architecture, Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow performed exactly as physics and mathematics predicted they would perform when faced with saturation designed to exceed their engagement envelopes. The term of art is leakers, missiles that get through, and leakers at hypersonic velocity carrying cluster munitions that separate into hundreds of submunitions upon atmospheric entry. These are not a system failure. They are a cost exchange problem that no point defense network can solve with current technology. Here is the number that makes this concrete. A single K-bar Shekin costs Iran approximately $1 to $3 million to produce. A single Arrow 3 interceptor costs Israel and the United States approximately $3.5 million per shot. David's Sling interceptors run $1 million each. When Iran fires coordinated salvos of 50 to 100 missiles, mixing ballistic, hypersonic, and cruise profiles, the defending side is forced into an exchange ratio where every dollar Iran spends costs Israel and America between $1.50 and $4 to counter. Run that math across weeks of sustained operations. Run it across the PRSM precision strike missiles that the U.S. Army has now confirmed were entirely depleted in this theater, weapons designed for a Pacific conflict with China, consumed in the Middle East. The magazine depth problem is not theoretical. It is documented, and it is here now. And this is the moment where I need you to understand something that changes the entire strategic picture. The Haifa refinery is not a symbol, it is a mechanism. Israel's largest petroleum processing facility, now burning, directly impacts the country's ability to sustain fuel for military logistics, civilian transport, and the electrical grid. When Israel struck Iran's South Pars gas fields, Refinery 4 and Refinery 7, combined daily capacity of 100 million cubic meters, Iran's IRGC spokesperson stated this was a threshold that would produce reciprocal infrastructure targeting. The Haifa strike was not escalation. It was a documented, pre-announced doctrine being executed with satellite-guided precision. Energy infrastructure warfare has now entered the conflict as a permanent operational layer. And this is exactly where the number on your screen translates to the number on your receipt. Let us talk about your wallet. Because the TEE-01B's targeting data and the Haifa refinery fire are not events happening in a foreign country on a television screen. They are events happening to the price of everything you buy. Brent crude has crossed $104 per barrel. North Sea 40's crude reached $148.87, a level not seen since 2008. Energy analysts at Onyx Capital Group have published projections. If the blockade holds and the 12 million barrel per day supply disruption persists, $140 to $150 per barrel becomes a floor, not a ceiling. Every $10 increase in crude translates to approximately 24 cents per gallon at the pump. We are not talking about $10, we are talking about $40 to $50 above pre-conflict baselines. That is nearly $1 per gallon before the diesel cascade reaches your food supply chain. Fertilizer is a petroleum derivative. The trucks that move food from farms to distribution centers run on diesel. The refrigeration that keeps your meat and dairy viable between farm and shelf runs on diesel. When diesel prices move, food prices move. Not in 6 months, not in 3 months. Now, the IMF has already revised its 2026 global GDP growth forecast down from 3.4% to 3.1% and described the conflict's continuation as placing the global economy at, in their words, a close call with global recession. The UNDP's numbers are more specific and more alarming. 8.8 million people in the Asia-Pacific region face direct poverty risk from rising fuel and food costs. Tuvalu and Marshall Islands have declared economic emergencies. Vanuatu, Nauru, and Kiribati are experiencing power grid failures as fuel supply chains collapse. These are the downstream mathematics of a $36.6 million satellite purchase made in Beijing in late 2024. And here's the number that ties the entire architecture together. America's petrodollar mechanism, the system that allows the United States to carry $39 trillion in debt without a sovereign crisis, requires that Gulf energy flows through channels where American military and intelligence control is credible and demonstrable. Credible to bond markets, credible to central bank reserve managers, credible to the sovereign wealth funds of nations that hold $7 trillion in U.S. Treasury instruments. The TE-01B has just demonstrated on leaked documents sourced by the Financial Times and missile impact patterns visible on open-source satellite imagery that American information dominance over the Gulf theater has been commercially circumvented. The naval blockade is selectively enforced, as the rich starry transit proved. The intelligence architecture has been mirrored by a $36.6 million Chinese commercial product, and the magazine depth of the most critical precision strike systems, PRSM, has been exhausted in a secondary theater. These are not isolated data points, they are a convergent signal, and convergent signals of this type do not stay contained in strategy papers. They move into treasury yield spreads, dollar index valuations, and the quiet conversations inside sovereign wealth fund boardrooms about whether the petrodollar architecture is still as solid as the last 40 years have assumed. There is no going back from the T01B. Netanyahu's bunker was found. The Haifa refinery is burning. The cost exchange ratios are documented and unfavorable, and a Chinese commercial satellite, costing less than a mid-sized American office building, is now orbiting a conflict zone where $90 billion per year in American intelligence spending was supposed to guarantee information supremacy. The math doesn't lie. $36.6 million versus $90 billion. One satellite versus the entire American intelligence architecture. The precision of the strikes tells you which one is performing. Run the numbers. The math is always the story. If this breakdown changed how you see what is actually happening in that region right now, share it. The people around you are paying for this conflict in their fuel bills and grocery receipts, and they do not know why. Now you do. Run the numbers. I'll see you in the next one.